All right. Thank you so much for joining to this class again, and welcome back to our SC200 series on security operation analyst. All right. So today we'll be jumping straight to the Defender portal, where we will be looking at rules. So last time we met, we were able to look at some policies, right, around Defender portals. And under the policies, we have, they're actually twin. It is actually policy and rule. So under emails and collaboration, if you go down, you see policies and rules. So last week we were able to look at Microsoft thread policies around the preset policies, where we talk about preset policies used by an engineer that is not so conversant with Microsoft Defender and is looking for recommendation. So with the help of the preset security policies, there are recommendations by Microsoft. So we're able to actually manage the policy settings, the protection settings, and also turn both the street and the standard protection on. So we can actually turn them off in case we don't need them. So like this, I've turned the standard protection off. And like this as well, I've turned the street protection on. So it is always advisable. Maybe initially when you're starting out, you just wanted to have Microsoft recommendations. Then when you had the time to create your own custom policies, you can just go ahead and turn those policies off. Now, if you go back to our threat policies and we go back to anti-phishing policies, you will notice that the preset policies that we have are currently turned off, even though it shows that previously we've actually used them before. So both the street and the standard are currently turned off. That means at this point, the only policy that is currently working is the anti-phishing default policies. And again, we mentioned that we can actually create our own policies here as well. Then going back again, we talk about the configuration analyzer being a tool to help us to identify our current policy configuration. So this is basically going to benchmark based on what you've configured in line with what Microsoft recommends. And with the help of this tool, we'll be able to see, okay, these are some places I need to make improvements on in terms of my policy configuration in order to increase the security posture of my environment. So we also looked at the anti-phishing and the anti-spam policies where we configure. So the same thing too, the presets policy that was set is also turned off for here as well. And I mentioned that we have both the outbound, the inbound defaults, the connection filter defaults, as well as the outbound default. I think I didn't mention something here. We can actually create just inbound and outbound, but for connection filter, you can actually edit this basically because this is actually speaking more of you want to allow some particular IPs or you want to block some particular IPs. That's what connection filter policies do. So you cannot actually create this, but you can always edit the default connection filter policies and put in any allowed IPs you would like to receive emails from, or you like users in your tenant to receive emails from, and also block IPs that you don't want them to receive emails from. Let's say, for example, now users are receiving spam emails from a particular, user, and after using the test connectivity to analyze a message header, you saw that the emails is coming from a particular IP. So after blocking the sender's email address, you can also block the domain. Then the IP that you're seeing that the email is coming from, if it's not a public IP, maybe for another organization that has email system, you can always put those IP under this connection filter block IP list, and you will not receive email from that particular IP. And especially if the IP is coming from a particular, is relating to a particular client machine that the user is sending the emails from, that policy is going to actually block that for us. Then we mentioned about the anti-malware policies, right? That helps detect if an emails, contain a malware or not. And again, we can see that the moment you turn off those the preset security policies, it's also showing here as well because we had some policies that were configured. And I think we did this demo last week where we were able to create this particular anti-malware demo, and we selected different policy configuration. Then again, remember, for priority, for any policy you configure, it will always have an higher priority compared to the default policies that we currently have on the tenant, which Microsoft recommended. And in terms of the policy, in case there are clashes in the policies now, the one with the lowest number has the highest priority, and that means that's the one that will have that will take precedence over any other policies that has been set in the organization. So in the past as well, we look at safe attachment and safe link, which was speaking to, having that to help us to you configure those policies to ensure that your organizations are protected from any malicious content from any email attachment or files in your SharePoint, in your OneDrive, in your Teams, as well as safe links to also protect users from clicking on any links. It could be in an email, in a document, that will go to a website that is actually already recognized as being malicious. So those are the policy bits that we have with threat policy, either the templated policies or the custom policy that we'll configure. So today we'll jump straight into rules. So the policy and rules, we've covered the policy aspect of things. Now I want to look at the rule aspect of things. Now the first rule we're going to see here is called the tenant block or allow list. So what is a tenant block or allow list? So basically, the tenant block or allow list is speaking to, when you have a Microsoft 365 organization with mailboxes in Exchange Online, or they have a standalone Exchange Online protection without an Exchange Online mailboxes. So you might actually disagree with Microsoft, with regards to the Exchange Online protection, or even with the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 featuring verdict, right? For example, now, maybe a good message that users in organizations are expected to receive, right, is being marked as bad in a case called a false positive, or a bad messages, that we're supposed to go to the junk, that we're supposed to be quarantined, right? Those messages that's coming into the user's mailbox in the case of a false negative. So what the tenants allow or block list in the Microsoft Defender portal does that it gives you a way to manually override the Defender for Office 365 or the Exchange Online protection featuring verdict. So you're saying, Microsoft, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with what you're doing, right? What your policy is doing for me based on the AI or the machine learning. It's not giving my users the best experience, right? Emails that should also go to junk emails, that ought to be quarantined, is going into my users' mailbox, and emails, right, that ought to go into their mailbox are being quarantined. So with the help of the domain allow and block list now for domains and address, what you have there, what you can configure is block. So that means by default, every domain is allowed to send emails to users in your organizations. But when you notice, that a particular emails or a particular user is spamming your organizations, or a particular domain is spamming your organization, maybe after you analyze an emails that one of your users received, and the emails was classified using the spam confidence level as maybe high phishing emails. Now you have the option to just block either the users or you block the domain. Now, one thing that Microsoft provides is that you can block up to 20 users or 20 domains. That's the maximum that is allowed here. So what you just use, okay, you want to add a particular domain. I don't know. Let me just put in a domain. Yeah. You want to block this particular domain, then the options that are available under it says remove block entry after 30 days. So you can say, okay, you want to block temporarily. Okay, you just want to block them for 1 month, right? To be sure that maybe probably after 1 month, they won't be sending those spam emails for you. So you have the option to select the number of days, either from 1 day, 7 days, or 30 days. These are the three options in terms of data that are available. But you want to block them forever, right? you can select this option, never expire. So that means this particular domain, they are blocked forever. So any users that the domain ends with this particular domain, jhkdeal.org, those users' emails will never get to users in your organization. And you also have the option to select specific dates, right? So you can select that you want to block them from this particular day. Let me say I want to block them from let me select 1st of November. Okay, you want to remove them. So after a particular date, right? Maybe you want to remove it after, let me see, let me block them and remove them after this day, right? So you have that option also available for you. That's about 90 days to that you can select for that option. Then another possibility, another one that is available is that you can provide additional information, right? Maybe you're leaving the organization and another admin is coming to the organization, right? And revealing this the tenant allowed and block list, the admin will be able to understand that, oh, this was the reason why this particular domain was blocked. So you can put this note, which is actually optional, but it's one of the best practice, right? Because the spamming our users. So once you're okay with whatever you've written there, you can just click on add. So what it means is that this particular domain will automatically be added as a domain that has been blocked in your tenant. Now, in this block, even though it says tenant allow and block list, you don't have option here to allow. Is another place you have the option. I showed that to us when we discuss threat policies, when we're talking about anti-spam. So under the anti-spam here, so if you create your own policies, right? I'm just going to pick from any of the default policies. So let me pick these policies, right? So if you scroll on here, so you see allow senders, allow domain. So if you select this, for example, now, so this is where you can configure allow. So if you want to allow, maybe I have a situation whereby whenever a user from our organization is sending emails to a particular domain, right? The emails is not getting delivered. And that same user can send emails to other domains apart from that domain, right? So what I just advised the admin from the other end is, please, can you just go to your anti-spam policies and allow the users, so instead of allowing the domain, you can just allow them the sender here. So that is where you can actually allow. But for tenants allow and block links, you are blocking the tenants, you're blocking them. There's nothing like you are allowing it there. So this will show everything, right? To give us a list of everything that has been blocked here. So you see that the action is blocked here. We'll modify the policies, the user accounts, the last date it was modified. Has this policy ever been used before? So if there's a situation whereby users from this tenant or this domain are sent an email, you're going to see the last use date here. Then the day that you've configured that the policy should be removed, it's also show here. Then also the notes that the admin has actually added why this particular domain was blocked here. You'll be able to see that as well. Yeah. So that's how to block a domain from the organization. Now the next we have here is a spoof senders, right? So basically some organizations are right, some bad actors want to spoof your domain. By spoofing means you want to specify the spoof domain pair that are always either it is allowed or blocked by a tenant. Now for this one, if you click on hard here for this spoof sender now, so the same thing, just like the tenant allow for the domain and address, you have option to add up to 20 as well, yeah? So, but for for the spoof sender, you have the option to even select, okay, are this is it internal sender that is being spoofed or external um user or external domain that is being spoofed? Then you have the option for allow and block here. If you click on this, so it says select allow to accept messages from the combination of the spoof sender and specify sending infrastructure. While the block here says select block to block the messages from the combination of the spoof senders or specified the sending infrastructure. So you can add a maximum of here. So it could be you are adding a domain, like the example they gave us here, contuso.com, or you are adding a subnet. So you have a subnet here. Then, or you can even be adding the user here, or you can even be adding, maybe they have sub domains. You can also, add them here as well. Then it tells that maximum of 20 entries, separated by a line break. So just use a line break to separate them. So the first value talk about is proof users. That's the sender domain or the sender emails for internal, or the sender domain for external. Then the second value, is the sending infrastructure. Maybe it could be the DNS, PTR record, or the verified DKIN, or the subnet IP. So for this one, you're adding the peer. So you're adding that the domain or the subnet. You're adding either the user or the user, as well as the domain of the user. So you can configure this based on what the business has actually require for you as the ID. So basically, in for spoof sender, right? If you manually override an existing allow verdict from the spoof intelligence that we mentioned, the block spoof sender become a manual block entry that only appears, right, on the spoof sender tab in the tenant allow send, right? So those appears. So that means you're doing the manual process. You're not depending on the spoof intelligence AI that Microsoft has already put in place for us. Now, the next one speaks to the URLs. Now, email messages that contains blocked URLs are blocked as high confidence fish, and messaging containing the blocked URLs are quarantined. So for this now, just like domains and an address, you have the option to block. And again, you can add a maximum of 20. And you can add even URLs with wildcards, right? You can just say, okay, any URL that ends with asterisk, dot this.com or .org and all that. So you can add the wildcards there to allow for you to have at least a lot of entries inside here. So just like the domain address and also, so let me say I want to block this particular URL. I can decide to say, okay, sometimes the URL can contain um subdomains. So I can put a wildcard here, right, for this particular URL. Then I can select the date, just like that of the domain and addresses. I just want to block for 1 day, 7 days, never expire. That means forever, or specific dates. Remember, this is speaking to maybe a maximum of 90 days from the day that this is configured. Then you can also put the note here, why are these URL blocked? And once you put that, it's optional, and you have that, and that particular URL would be added as a block URL for your tenant. Now, the next one speaks to file. Now, email messages that contains block files, right? They are blocked as malware, unlike that of the URLs. Those ones are blocked as high confidence fish, but these ones are blocked as malware because it's assumed that malware are actually delivered by files, and messages containing the block files are quarantined. So if you have already configured, maybe you said that, okay, I want to basically select a block. I put the file arches here. You can get the file arches. Once you add them here, then the same thing, you configure this as well too. So the file arches is what Microsoft is going to use to be able to recommend or recognize the file that you are trying to block. And again, maximum entry are actually what Microsoft has provided for us. So you block its file to stop users from accessing it and prevent the delivery of email containing the file. So if you click on allow, if you want to allow a file by submitting the file to Microsoft, you actually have the option to actually submit from the submission portal. You can submit a file for Microsoft to actually, just like you're revealing when we discuss around our submission. Then I think the last one speaks to IP addresses. So for IP addresses, right, you are actually either you want to allow or block an IP address org-wide in the organization. You see this next is add. So add is either you're aligning or blocking. So you can see the difference between for that of IP address. So let's say I want to add a particular IP address. I can just put the IP address here, then configure this. You can see that this was on default, never expired. That means it's expected that since you are allowing it, you want to allow that particular IP forever in the tenant, so that any emails coming from that particular IPs, the mails will be delivered. And if you manually create a block entry, so instead of allowing it, you said you want to block it. And if you create that block entry, all incoming emails from that particular IP address, they are dropped. They will not even get to the server at all. At the edge of the services, that's where they are dropped. And again, you have to see that the maximum that is allowed is 20 IPs that is also allowed for that. So those are some of the capabilities that Microsoft has provided under the tenant allow or block list. So it is that you are allowing stuffs or you are blocking them. And most of the time it is block, as we've seen from this demo so far. Any question? Or move to the next.
No questions.
All right, thank you. So let's go to the next rule that we can configure. The next rule is speaking to email authentication settings. Now, most of the time, this is actually a common scenario, especially in fact, one of the important things that Microsoft Defender for Office 365 is doing is actually more or less on email authentications. In terms of email authentications, Defender for Office 365 is gearing towards ensuring that users, are prevented from receiving spam email, phishing emails, and the likes, right? So Microsoft as an organization has tried as much as possible with the global cybersecurity body to, provide some email authentications, right? That users or administrators can actually configure for their tenants. So as Microsoft 365 organization with some mailbox in Exchange Online or a standalone Exchange Online protection organization without Exchange Online mailbox. So protecting the integrity of email messages from senders in your domain is actually very important. And recipients should feel confident that messages from senders in your domain really came from the senders in your domain. And that's the goal of the Defender for Office 365. And since the goal is focused on email authentication, right? So we'll call it email authentication or email validation, right? So email authentication is actually like a group of standards to identify and prevent the delivery of email messages from forged senders, which is also known as spoofing, right? So a spoof senders are commonly used in business email compromise. So if, as a cybersecurity, so you should understand that we have what we call BEC, right? Which is a business email compromise, which is one of the ways bad actors are targeting organizations, right? Using the spoof and phishing or even other email attacks. So the spoof sender, they commonly use either the BECs or they use this phishing method or even other email attacks. And some of the standards that are provided are about four of them. The first one we'll call it the sender policy framework, which is SPF, right? That's the acronyms you use. Now, policy frameworks specifies the source email servers that are authorized to send emails from the domain. Now, generally, let me take us back to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center and go to settings and go to domains where we verify this domain. Now, for currently I have two domains that are healthy here, which is the on Microsoft domain, which is a default that Microsoft provide when I was setting up this tenant, because that is actually the domain. If anything that has to do with your billing, that has to do with subscriptions, things. So if you want to help to troubleshoot issues with your billing, with your subscription, Microsoft cannot use any of this custom domain because this could be anything. but the domain that they provided for you, that is what you can use. So that is the default domain. Now, if you check the DNS record for this, I am not sure if this is going to provide information. All right. Anyway, so I can see a DNS record here. I have a TST record. I have like 4 TST record for this particular domain, but it's not what I actually needed. Let me go back to any of the custom domains so I can explain that to you. Now, this particular domain now, I'm seeing that it has a possible service issue. There are two issues that this could be: either that this domain has expired, it was not renewed, or all the records that were supposed to, be configured are not properly configured. Let me go to a domain that is showing LD, which is this one. So this domain cloudschools.nl, which is the current domain that I'm currently using to sign in. If I go to the DNS record for this domain, I'm going to see that unlike the other ones, I'm seeing the status of all this showing okay. Where am I going here? I'm going to TST record. So the sender policy framework, which is SPF, is actually the TST record for the organization, right? Because this TST value is very important. This is when you see this SPF, right? See, the value is SPF1, which include xpf.protection.outlook.com. This is a sender policy framework that is protecting this tenant from, to specify that the source email server are authorized to send emails. So sometimes one of the things organization configure is that if they cannot get the source email server, emails should not deliver to user with the organization. Rather, they will receive an NDR, right? That the sender or the sender domain need to configure this particular settings. Yeah. Now, in the situation, there's all call. We're going to look at that. It's still under protection, but let me just jump there a bit. Enhance email filtering system. Enhanced email filtering is a process whereby the organization of the tenant is not depending on the Exchange Online protection, which is actually the email filtering by Microsoft or the Defender for Office 365, right? They are using third-party protections like the Mimecast, like the Barracuda. In my organization, we use Trend Micro. Now, the reason why I mentioned earlier that when the particular users from my tenant send an email to a particular domain, the email doesn't get delivered. In fact, any email from our organization doesn't get delivered to that particular domain. So today now, when we send an email to that particular organization, they will not receive it. Instead, the user that sent the email, we actually get a bounce back, right? Now, the reason was because when I analyzed the NDR that the user was getting, the NDR was pointing to the fact that the domain, which is the recipient domain, is unable to verify the server, the email server that the emails is coming from. Why? Because we have an enhanced email filtering system. We have 2 layers of filtering. So like if users send an email to us internally to our organization, we have 1 layer of email filtering before another layer of email filtering, which is the Exchange Online, from Trend Micro to Exchange Online. But if you are sending emails out, right? So because it still has to go through the email filtering system to send out, especially the Exchange Online protection, we noticed that because of that, any organization that have configured our policies, right? Any emails our domain sent to them, they will not receive it, except they go ahead to configure that tenant allow, like they allowed our domain and ends to be able to send an email. So the sender policy framework, this is where you actually configure it. So some organization will not have this because they are using third-party systems. So you see something like maybe they are using Mimecast, for example. Now you see Mimecast, something Mimecast here. Or if they're using Barracuda, you see Barracuda here. Or if they are using Trend Micro. So that is already configured from the Exchange Online to the Mimecast before the email. So we call it advanced. It's actually a kind of an advanced delivery. We're going to look at that. It's still under our role. So that is sender policy framework. Now, if you go back to our Defender portal, the second one that is available, which is not common, is this ACK. What is ACK? Authenticated Receive Chain. Now, authenticated recipient preserves original email authentication information by known services that modify emails messages in transit. And the destination email server can use this information to authenticate messages that would otherwise fail the mark. Now, I will explain what the mark is because it's one of the other ones that we need to discuss. Now, for this authentication receive chain, right, is preserving the authentication results. So in a situation whereby organizations is using the enhanced email filtering system, using different filtering services, right? This act is actually what helps to preserve or ensure that the original servers that the email is coming from is able to see it, even though in between you get to see that as the email message is in transit, it's maybe it will change, maybe it will change the sender IP to maybe the IP of the server that it's for. But this trusted axilla, it does ensure that the original sender IP where the email comes from. So the goal is to capture the full authentication story of the email, right? So that's the goal of this app, right? So that at the end of the day, the recipient server knows exactly the server IP that the email comes from. Now, if you click on this add here for this, so you have the option to, add trusted signing domains, and the domains name you enter here must match to the domains shown in the domain tag in the ArcSeal and the Arc message signature header. And you can find these emails in the header of the mail. Now, if you remember when we did test connectivity, we analyze an email header, there is always a point that says ask you or ask message signature, right? So this is actually part of the email message headers that will ensure that the original sender's IP is preserved as the email is in translate. So you're not going to do much about that. Where I want to focus effort under this email authentication is DKIM. So DKIM, what is DKIM? DKIM stands for Domain Keys Identified Email. Domain keys identify emails, and the work of DKIM uses a domain to digitally sign important elements of the message to ensure that the message hasn't been altered in transit. So what DKIM is doing basically is actually an authentication process that can help you to protect both the senders and recipients from forged and phishing emails. So it provides a digital signature, right, to show that these emails really came from a user who is an authenticator user to that particular domain. So in case somebody is not from a particular domain and the person is trying to, forge, fish, spend a spoof email, right, to users to, assume that the email is coming from the that particular domain, right? So this domain key is actually what helps you to add the signature to your domain so that the recipients know that the message actually came from users in your organizations and they were not modified after they've been sent. Now, if you check, if you see that I currently have, so the same domains I have here is also showing there. The same domains I have here, the inferiors.org, the cloudschools.nl, and the experience.net. If you go here, you're seeing the same domain. Then you have the additional, so this inferiors tech, right, .me, this is also given by Microsoft. This also is also given by Microsoft as well. Now, if you check under accepted domains, so it's the same name of the domain that is the accepted domain. Then in terms of domain type, you see that they are all authoritative. Now, where is the most important part of this scheme is here. Apart from this last one that shows enable, every other domain here are showing disable. And this is not your best practice as security engineer. You have to ensure that your domain DKIM is actually configured for it. So let's see, how do we configure DKIM for domain? If you click on this enable here, right, it's going to tell you that I cannot enable this because some keys are missing. So it tells me that Microsoft Exchange management tags validation exception. CNAME records does not exist for this configuration. So please publish the following CNAME record. So what I usually do is I can pull up a notepad. Let me pull up a notepad real quick. Right, then copy this. So I'm going to copy the domain names and copy this and stop here and drop it on the notepad. Drop here. So I'm going to actually arrange that into so host name, point to address. I need that. So there are two keys here. So we see that it's actually two of them. You have the selector 1 and the selector 2. Now, the next thing I need to do, I need to go to the domain registrar where I purchase this domain and where the domain is currently being managed. Because it's possible that you can purchase the domain from a particular vendor registrar, and maybe after 90 days, the vendor is messing up. You can decide to migrate or move the domain to another vendor. Another situation is that you can decide to purchase domain directly from Microsoft. You can, yes. If you go to the domain here and click on buy domain, you can actually buy a domain from Microsoft here. You can buy a domain from Microsoft. The only port is that this particular domain, you cannot move this domain after 90 days. So let me say I want to buy this domain. I'll check availability here. If this domain is available, it's going to tell me that this is not available, but it's telling me others that are available here. So I can say, okay, let me buy this one that is available. Say this is already being verified on the tenant. Yes, please choose a different one. Actually, it's verified, but it's no longer available anyway. So this is actually the domain here. So if I want to get the who is managing this domain. So from here, it tells me that it's managed at Azure. Yeah, that's what it tells me. But if I copy this domain and go to who is, so let's say I don't know who is domain, type who is domain here, pick this first one that says who is domain. So even though the domain is actually managed on Azure, I actually purchased the domain on Azure. Try search here to tell me the original register. So Microsoft is partnering with this company called whitewestdomain.com, right? So any domain I purchase from Azure, I can purchase an app service domain, right? So Microsoft will have to check with these guys. Is this domain available? Oh, yes, it's available. Okay, let's do it. So it tells me the status of the domain. Is this domain active or registered? Let me even do the other domain. I want to confirm if this domain is available. Who is? So this is actually available. All right, so actually bought the domain. To expire, I have not renewed the domain yet. Okay, so now I know where the domain is purchased from. But because I know that this domain is managed at Azure. But however, from here, it tells me that the domain is actually bought. Is bought, the registrar is this, but I don't have access to this portal because I didn't buy the domain directly from there. Just that this time that at the back end, Microsoft is liaising with this company, right? To ensure that I can, because Microsoft is not a domain registrar company, but they want to make it easy for users, for businesses to, easily purchase domain. So that's why they had this option here, so they can purchase straight, but they still partner with the this domain registrar is whitewestdomain.com. So that's where the domain is actually registered with, even though you have the name servers pointing to Azure. That means this domain is currently being managed on Azure. So let me go to Azure. You can type portal.azure.com and look for the domain. So the goal here is just to configure DKIM. want to add the two records, which are the two CNAME record, both select one and select two, right? So if you search here, app service domain, search app service domain, we already have it here. So just click on app service domain here. So these are all the domains I've bought in the past and they are still active. So I'll just look for the domain, so which is this cloudschool.nl. So for here, I'm just waiting for it to load. For here, what I'm doing is just to add this name record. So once I get here, so the same thing you do on Azure is the same thing you do on the domain registrar. Once you sign into the domain registrar portal, locate the domain, just like the way I located it on Azure. Then look for where it says manage DNS record, or settings, can be anything. But most of them use manage DNS record. Now I'm able to see that I can see this domain, can see the record. This is a subscription, the subscription ID, the number of record set I have. I can decide to click on record set here to see all the records that I currently have in the domain. Yeah. So it tells me that I have an NX record, which is Azure, an SOE record, which are also still Azure Hostmaster, then MX record, which is responsible for the emails. The reason why users can send emails to any users in my tenants because of this MX record. If this was not properly configured, then emails will not be dropping in, no matter what. Then the TST record mentioned is actually the XPF record. Why this auto discover record is what is responsible so that I can actually sign into an Outlook with my domain and automatically there'll be an auto discover. So there's something that it shows me here. So if I click on OK, it will be able to sign in. So it's going to discover that my email address. So it is this auto discover that is responsible for that. But our goal here is to just add those two names records. So I just click on add here. Once I click on the add, it's going to bring a right pane for me. So the first thing I need to select, what is the record type? The record type I need is a CNAME, right? I just select CNAME. So what is the name? All right. What is the name? So I'll go back to my notepad. Let me just open it here. So the host name is this select one underscore domain key. So I just copy this and I paste it here. So I can leave the rest like that. Alias record set to none. So if I want it to be set to yes, I can leave it like that. What is important? Let me just use yes for this. So this is telling me that I still have to purchase this, but this is not what I want. So let me leave it back as no. I don't want an alias record. What I need is just this. So what will be in the alias is there. What will be in the alias is actually the pointing address. Where is it pointing to? So I can just copy this address here, pointing address of hello, copy, and I paste it here. So I can leave the rest as default, right? I can leave the rest as default because I was in space. So let's say it's time to live. Then the units I can leave it as 1 hour, but let me leave it as 1 minute and leave it. Then once I confirm everything, so the type is actually what determines what this is going to give to you, right? So I select an A record. If I select A record now, it's a different thing it's going to give me. If I select MX record, it's a different thing it's going to give me. So let me leave that and say add. So it's going to save the record set for me once it's added. So you see the record has been created. So you see on there, tells me the record name selector one dot underscore domain key has been created for me. I can actually leave that. I can even still edit it. Maybe I'm seeing that everything I'm having here is 3,600. So I can leave that also. So just for it to rhyme. But I can still leave it at 60 anyway. So let me leave it as hours, then apply the changes. So I'm going to, while that is loading, I'm going to copy the second one. So the two synonyms must be present for that DKIM to actually enable. I'm going to copy these as well. The same thing, I'm going to click on add here. So I currently have a record. So it's telling me a record point to an IP address. If I go to MX record now, it's going to point to different things. It's going to give me a preference and the mail exchange. So I don't need all those ones. What I need is CNAME. You select the CNAME. So the name is the host name. So I'm going to paste that, select to 2, and the pointing address, which is like the alias or the value, is this. I'm going to copy that and paste that there, leaving the rest as default the way they are. I'm going to click on add. So usually this takes about 4 to 10 minutes to propagate the pending. It takes about 4 to 10 minutes, sometimes 4 to 24 hours rather, depending on the domain registrar. So once I'm done, I can refresh these for propagations to actually happen. So I can just give it some time, but however, we don't have time. So I'll go back here and click on turn this on. So once it sees those record and those record is good, right? It's propagated across servers. It's going to see it, and that will actually, that will actually turn on automatically for me. So it's taking some time. Just give it some time. Okay, I see now it's enabled. So it's telling me it's now valid and it's enabled. So that's how to enable deacon. So what this means is going forward, any emails that is being sent from my domain, this particular domain, cloudschools.nl, will be actually have digital signature. It's going to add a deacon signature to the email. So in case a tenant that's required that any email that is coming to the tenant must be digitally signed, right? Those emails will not be bounced back. They will be getting to the recipient. So that's that about DKIM. So the last one. So what DKIM does is to use domain to digitally sign important emails, important elements of the message to ensure that the message hasn't been altered in transit. So we have another one that is not currently here under this email authentication settings. Just like SPF is under our domain here. So the other one is called DMARC. What is DMARC? DMARC means domain-based message authentication and reporting and conformance. Domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance. So what this does is that it specifies the action for messages that fails SPF or DKIM. So SPF and DKIM are working together. So this SPF, which is a TST record, and the DKIM that we just configure, they are working together. So DMARC is actually what you specify the action. Okay, once an email is sent or our tenant sends an email, right, to organization and it fails SPF or DKIM, what action should actually happen? Because this is not part of what we need to discuss more into emails. So it's basically you can decide to say, okay, let the message be quarantined, let the message be dropped, let the message be sent to the junk folder, or different actions can actually be configured. And it's almost similar to what we did for DKIM. It's just a key that we need to add, right? We had the key for DMARC, same way the way we added our CNAME. So the key is also a CNAME record as well. We just add it here too. Well, we're not going to do that right here in this class. So that is that about email authentications. Do you have questions before we move to the next?
No, there's no questions. Watch the video later to get more insights.
Okay, awesome. So for that of DMARC actually is a TST value because I mentioned this senior earlier is a TST value which is actually almost a line that you just had to your tenant. Like we can just say, okay, let me add a TST value. So this is saying a record, so look for TST record, right? So under the TST record here, the host name is usually underscore DMARC, right? So the value So the value could be anything. So the value is usually what do you want to happen to this email. So most times you can say, okay, I want it to the email to be rejected. I want the email to go. I want the email to, you know, so I can just select this. So it's always like I go to the beginning of the value. The value will also say v value equals to d mark one, then p. The p is the one that does the action, right? So the p can be equals to reject, right? When p is set to reject, it means that the messages should be rejected. What actually happens to the message depends on the destination email servers, but the message are typically discarded. Now, if p is equals to quarantine, for example, if you put p equals to quarantine here, the messages should be accepted but marked. Again, what actually happens to the message depends on the destination email system. For example, now the message might be quarantined as spam or delivered to the junk email folder or delivered to the inbox with an identifier to add a subject or a message body. Then even this P can be set to none. And none suggests that no action for the message that failed the mark, right? And what happens to the message also depends on the email protection features in the destination email system. So most of those things are dependent on the destination email. So you can change these to your domain. Okay, where the RU here, where should it be sent to? You can put that there. And once you put that there, for the is actually for the DMARC aggregated aggregates report URI. So where do you want reports to be coming to? Maybe you have a particular domains, a particular email groups that you set. You can just put that there for emails to be coming to that particular mailbox, basically. So once you're done, just click on add, and that will be set for the organization. I don't set this now, so I'm just going to delete this. I don't have emails filling. All right, so let's go down. The next rule we'll be looking at is advanced delivery. Now for advanced delivery, what it's basically doing is that you have two options. There is SecOps mailbox and there's phishing simulation. Now, you can specify a dedicated mailboxes, that's for SecOps mailbox, that is used by the security team. And the purpose of the mailbox is to collect and analyze any unfiltered messages, be it good or bad, right? So emails will be sent to that particular mailbox that you've configured for the organization. For example, now, you can click on Add here, or you can either use the edit button here. It's the same thing. If you use the edit button or you click on add here. So maybe as an organization, you have a security group. So you can just say, let's say InfoSec. I'm not sure I have that, but let me just put that there. InfoSec at you create the group InfoSec at the domain cloudschools.nl. I don't have that, so it won't pop out that for me. So once it will pop up the if you actually have this infosec, right, which is a SecOps mailbox, or let me quickly create a group for that. It can be a group or a shared mailbox. So let me add a Microsoft 365 group and call it SecOps. SecOps. Next, and assign myself as the owner. Assign myself as the owner. Mhm. Where's my admin account? Okay, add next. So I can add members there depending on the people that are part of the team. So the group email, I want to call it SecOps. So I'm making it private just for the SecOps teams. Allow admin roles to be assigned to this role. I can uncheck, I can leave that by default, then create this group. Okay, it's actually created as in various here. So See SecOps. It's not bringing it yet. Let me refresh this. So usually to actually keep your organization's security by default, right? Exchange line protection does not allow safe list or filtering bypass for messages that are identified as malware or high confidence fish, right? So when so far a message has been identified as a malware or an high confidence phishing, um, Exchange Online protection does not allow safe lists, especially when you are using the security default. But there are specific scenarios, right, that require the delivery of unfiltered messages. Example is a security operation mailbox that we are talking about here, which is actually a dedicated mailbox that are used by the security teams to collect and analyze unfiltered message. So let me see if this mailbox will be there. Ready? Showing. Okay, it has to be a mailbox. Second is dedicated mailbox that is used by security team. So it will not allow a group here. So that means what I needed to do instead was to create a shared mailbox. Let's create a shared mailbox. SecOps. Yeah, SecOps. SecOps. I'm going to use this. This is used, so I cannot use this one. I call it InfoSec. InfoSec. It's available. Save change. So it requires a mailbox, not a group. So the group I was creating earlier because I wanted to, such a when email go to that group, every member of that group receive that email. Okay, so I can add members to receive that. So I'll just add the members of the SecOps teams there. So I can now go back. Let's see if it's going to bring it out this time around. Info sec. It's not bringing SecOps for me here. Okay, I think. Okay, right. So close. So to show you, if I refresh here, that particular mailbox is going to show. So any messages, right, that are not filtered, they will come to that particular mailbox basically. Now the phishing simulation here, so it's part of our discussion. By the time we discuss attack simulations training. Now, what is phishing simulation? You're trying to ensure that users in your organizations, right? You're trying to train them to be able to recognize phishing emails, how to spot any phishing emails, how to just, instead of clicking on link, right, you just place their mouse on it to know where the link will actually take them to. Maybe it's a safe link or a link that will take them to a site, a third-party site that is actually a phishing site to harvest their credentials and the likes, right? So the phishing simulation here, this is actually because we are under advanced delivery. It's from third-party system. Let me give you a practical example. In my organization today, we don't use this attack simulation training, but we use a phishing simulation by a third-party organization, right? What it means is that the email that that third-party system is sending, if it's going to send it to users in our organization, our system, our security system is going to actually see that email as phishing emails, and the emails will not go. And because the purpose of the emails is to actually, we are the ones sending it to our users, or rather, our InfoSec teams are the ones sending it to the users. And they want those emails to be delivered to the users, even though it's coming internal, but it's sure as though it's coming from external, right? It's coming from an external IP, such a way that we want every users in the organization to receive that email, but we are the ones sending it, but we are not using the internal tool which is the attack simulator here, because this comes with a particular license, which we don't have as the organizations. So that's phishing simulation. Now, what it does is that the third party phishing simulation simulate attacks, right? That can help us to identify and train vulnerable users before a real attack impacts the organization. So we need to ensure that those emails, because we're using a third-party system, the emails will never get delivered to our users. So how do we, exempt such emails to actually, get delivered to the users is where this advanced delivering phishing simulation actually comes in. Now, what we do here is to actually either configure IP address, sender domain, and even URLs that are part of the phishing simulation emails, right? We're going to actually need to whitelist them here, basically. So the advanced delivery policies in the EOP is to prevent either inbound messages in a specific scenarios from being filtered, and the advanced delivery policies ensure that messages in those scenarios are really achieved. Maybe you're looking at filters in EOP, you're talking about the 0 hour purge for spam and phishing attacks to take on actions on these messages. Or you can even look at safe links in Defender for Office 365 or safe attachments, or even the default system alerts, which are not triggered for those scenarios. So we want to ensure that those things are already bypassed with the help of this advanced delivery policy for the third party phishing simulations. So if you click on hard here, right? So again, it's either you click on the hard or you click on the edit here. So when you want to, before performing the action of sending that phishing simulation to users, it's very important that you come here. So the domains that the email is going to come from, you have to put it here. The IP that the emails will come from, you put it here. Then any URL that will be part of that attack, body of the emails, right? That you want them, they're actually phishing, they're actually URLs for phishing, and you want to ensure that those URLs also passes through. They are not filtered, right, by any of the system that we have, like the filter in EOP, like I mentioned, even the 0 hour purge, that's ZAP, which is responsible for spam and phishing. Then even the automated investigation and response, as well as the clustering in the Defender for Office 365. So all of this system, the EOP, the ZAP, the safe link, the safe attachment, the default system alerts, the automated information, they're going to basically ignore the message because they know that this has been configured already as a third party phishing simulations. So once that's done, after you put in all the details here, right? Ensure that you don't put things that are because this is very important. Anything you put here, if you're demoing here, that's I'm not putting any information here because if a bad actors, picks up these videos and they use that domains and they hype this information and they try to send, they can send phishing emails into these particular senders, right? That's why I'm not putting anything there. So, but the goal at the end of the day is to ensure that messages that are identified by the advanced delivery policies, they are not security threats, right? So the messages are marked with system override. So the systems override such messages. And for admin experiences shows that messages are actually either their phishing simulations or their SecOps email system override. And admin can use the values to filter and analyze the messages either using the Threat Explorer or the real-time detection in the Defender for Office 365 that we mentioned the last class, or we can use the email entity page in which admin can view a message that was allowed by organization's policy by the SecOps mailbox or the phishing simulation under the tenant override in the override section of the email entity page. Then also the threat protection status report. Admin can filter the data by system override in the drop-down menu and select to see messages that are allowed through to either the phishing simulation system override. And to see the message allowed by the SecOps mailbox override, you can always, go back to the chart, that chart in our threat, the chart in our threat explorer. So you can always filter this particular chart to see the breakdown in terms of the reason for the breakdown. Then also for if you're looking at Defender for endpoints, which you've not actually looked at, for advanced hunting in a Defender for endpoint, right? The phishing simulation and the SecOps mailbox systems overrides are option within the org level policies in the email event. When we get to Defender for endpoint, you're going to see that. Then again, the campaign view also, admin can filter the system override source and select either the phishing simulation or the SecOps mailbox to see how those things are configured, right? So these are the available options for us when we talk about rules as it pertains to the advanced delivery option. So now let's talk about so generally in summary, what advanced delivery option does is overrides for specific and special system use cases. Now, in terms of enhanced filtering connectors, now this part, right? Sometimes organizations are working in hybrid. Maybe they have Exchange server on premise and they also have Exchange online. And they've connected. That's actually how my organization is today. We have an hybrid setup for email system. So connector has to be created, between the Exchange online as well as the Exchange server. Where do we create this connector? If you go back to the admin center, you can show all. I go to Exchange. Let's go to Exchange admin center. Okay. If you go to mail flow here, you're going to see connectors. In a situation whereby organizations are running hybrid, so there are two ways to this, right? It is either you are running a hybrid system, or you have what I mentioned, the third-party spam filtering system, if the Mimecast, the Barracuda, or the Trend Micro. Now you can configure. So in the enhanced email filtering system, right? Before you want to enhance your filtering system, that's the goal at the end of the day. But your organization is set up in such a way that you have what called complex routing of the email or compound routing of emails. Normally, for an organization that is not using the third-party spam filtering, that means you're using the default Exchange Online Protection, EOP, for your email system. And that can actually be seen here from your domain. So once you get to your domain page here, and we're able to see that for this particular domain, there is no third party. I can't send it like Mimecast, Barracuda, Trend Micro as part of this TST record. That means what this organization is using, they're using what? spf.protection.outlook.com. This is the EOP that is available directly from Microsoft. This is direct for you. That means you don't need to start configuring connectors. But in the situation whereby you want to, you have a complex email delivery system. So there is need to, okay, let's say you're creating a connector. The mail flow is that from your organization's email goes to either your organization's email service provider first, and from there, it goes to your Office 365. You click on next, right? You can put the name of the connector, email from Exchange Server to Office 365, right? Then you go next. Let's say Exchange Server to Office 365. So for an organization that is using an hybrid, right? So you want to verify the subject of the email, you configure this. I don't have all this information. However, once you click on next to allow that the center have an email. The goal, what I wanted to do was just create a connector. Now, any connector that you create here, any connectors that you create here will automatically be shown here under this enhanced filtering for the connector. Because the goal of this rule is to allow you to filter email based on the actual source of the message that arrive over the connector. Because for connectors now, because of the complex routing of emails, it's sometimes be very, very difficult. For example, now, let's say my organization, I'm using Mimecast as my email filtering system. As the email is coming from a sender into my organization, it doesn't go through EOP straight up. If it goes through EOP straight up, if I analyze a message header, I'll be able to get the source IP where the email is coming from. Now, a situation whereby I have a filtering system in between, right? Once the email comes from the senders, it goes to the server for my email filtering system. Example again, the Mimecast. Then after the system has done the filtering of the emails to check for spams, malware, phishing, right? Then the emails get delivered to the user's mailbox. If I'm going to pick up that emails, right, and analyze the message header, it's going to tell me that that email came from the server IP of that Mimecast, not the server IP of the sender. Why? Because it is a complex routing situation. It is a complex routing situation. So what email enhanced email filtering is doing is that it's trying to ensure that even though you have a complex routing situation in your environment, right? Emails are filtered in such a way that it still keeps the original source IP of the sender. So I'm able to know that, oh, even though the email eats multiple sources, it eats from the sender's IP, it eats the third-party filter system that I have, Mimecast. From there, it's going to my Exchange Online protection. Then from there, it's coming to the Exchange Online or the server. So those movement that is happening in between, right? Those transits, those travel that is happening can actually make the IP or the source IP to be different from the original IP. So the goal of the enhanced filtering, but because I don't have a connector here in my tenant, maybe in the future if I set up the connectors, it's a demo account for a third-party filtering. I can show you how this particular feature works. But today, in all honesty, Microsoft is still trying to work on improving the deliverability and minimizing false positive. There's still a lot of false positives, that are happening around this particular enhanced feature because of what it's trying to do. But Microsoft is trying as much as possible to ensure that emails will retain their original IP address and the sender information when being routed through various services before being routed to the Exchange Online, but allowing more accurate identification of spoofing attempts, right? And Microsoft keeps on rolling out updates, right, regarding these particular changes, especially things around decrease in false positives. So because of this system, right, it's trying to sometimes emails that how to go to the inbox are going to the junk folders, right, for some of the users. So that's in terms of decreasing the false positives now. That means every legitimate emails that were previously mislabeled as spoof email will now be correctly identified. Then another thing that Microsoft is trying to do with this particular rule is to enhance accuracy, the accuracy of the filtering stack and the machine learning model has actually been improved upon, then leading to better decisions and also prevention of spoofing and also phishing attempts. Then another thing they're trying to do under our email authentication is to provide a reliable email authentication by the use of the SPF, that's the Sender Policy Framework, DKIM, as well as DMARC, to be more effective in establishing the reputation of the sending domains, for further aiding in terms of detection of impersonation and spoofing. Now, if an organization, I'm just giving this as a tip, if an organization uses a complex routing scenario, Microsoft support doesn't support it. So if you have once you have a connector, in your organizations, right, it's going to a third party. Once you raise a request, Microsoft support will not support that, right? Because it's not part of their skill set. But except if the person is raising a paid support with a premier support team, right? Then the person is going to get a support. But for free support, it's not actually supported. That's what they'll tell you. All right, let's go to, I think, the last one under this. Yeah, very interesting one, which is the quarantine policies. So if you remember the last time we were talking about the presets, both the standard and the strict policies, there was a part that we saw quarantine policies, right? Now, by default, the quarantine page has like has three default policies, right? That Microsoft has created. What is email quarantine policies? What is it actually about? Now, in Exchange Online Protection and also the Microsoft Defender for Office 365, quarantine policies allow admins to define the user experience for quarantine messages. User experience in terms of what users are allowed to do to their quarantine messages, like messages that they are actually the recipients, based on why the message was quarantined. I remember earlier this week, somebody reached out to me that, oh, I saw some emails, but I saw the message that those emails are being quarantined. I'm trying to release this email. Yet my organization using the complex routing. I checked the emails, right, in the quarantine portal. The emails are not there. But in our organization, the first thing you check is actually the third party trend micro system, right? The email will actually quarantine using the trend micro, but it's a different that actually works on that, which is our infosec team. So there's a policy that has been configured. Users cannot release those quarantine messages themselves. So the infosec teams need to review those messages, check why trend micro quarantine those messages before the message will be released to the user. So these are like, I'm trying to click on release to release the message. I was just laughing. I had to advise user that please, this message was not quarantined by the Exchange Online Protection. Rather, it was quarantined by the Trend Micro. Reach out to the InfoSec team, tell them they are legitimate emails, you're expecting those attachments and those links, right? And let them allow or release the message for you. So in terms of users experience, right, for quarantine messages. So do you want users to be allowed to do their own, to to release messages on their own, or whether users receive periodic, maybe every 4 hours or daily or weekly notifications about their quarantine message using them quarantine notifications. So traditionally, right, users have been allowed or denied levels of interactivity with quarantine messages based on why the message was quarantined, right? For example, users can view and release messages that were quarantined as spam or bulk, but they can't view or release messages, right, that were quarantined as high confidence fish or malware. That's the traditional settings. And the default quarantine policies enforce these historical user capabilities, and they are automatically assigned in the supported protection features that quarantine messages. Now, again, if you don't like the default user experience in terms of capability for the quarantine messages for specific features, right, which is including the lack of quarantine notifications, you can actually create and use a custom quarantine policies, right? And you can create and assign the quarantine policies in the Defender portal, right? Or you can even use the PowerShell, maybe the Exchange Online PowerShell, right? Um, to assign those policies basically. Now, if you click on this first default full access policy now, so this is a default policy. You cannot edit it, you cannot change it. This is what Microsoft has actually created. So default full access policy is actually policies that allow users to release the message from quarantine themselves. They can delete the message, they can preview the message, they can even allow senders. But for this, quarantine notification is disabled for the users. That's the default full access policy. Now, if you come to the second one, admin only access policy. For admin only access policies now, you see that under users, there is nothing they can do. There is no actions for them. So if you assign this admin only access policies to, you know, your organization policies, either the preset security policies or any of the anti-phishing, anti-malware policies, right? That means it's only the admin that will be able to, perform actions on any quarantine message. Then also there's a default full access with no notification policies now. Now for this now, users have some permission, which is they can release the message from quarantine, they can delete the message, they can preview the message, they can allow the sender, and quarantine notification is enabled from block senders and also addresses excluded. So those are default policies. If you feel any of those policy works for you as the admin of the organization, you don't need to bother yourself or disturb yourself by creating a custom policy. Just apply anyone that is applicable to your organization based on the business requirements. But if none of them is okay for you, what you can do is to actually add a custom policy here. So you can put the custom policy. So depending on the naming convention that you have as an organization, you can put various custom policy. Okay, you see next. So now you have the option for recipient message access, which is where you have to specify what access you would like recipients to have when quarantine policy is applied to the message. Now there are two access level. We have the limited access and you can set specific access, which is advanced. Now for limited access now, recipient can view quarantine message, but they cannot release it from quarantine state. So you can say, okay, this is what I want, and you just select next. No, under the quarantine notification, they want the users to be notified their message was quarantine. I would like them to be notified. And so this brings us to options. You want to include the quarantine message from the block sender address, or you don't want to include the quarantine message from the block sender address. So already, if you have created some users under your anti-spam policies and you've added them as a block sender, right? This is when you put this. But I don't want them to include them from block sender because I've created it to be blocked. So I don't want that. Then you review all the summary here. Then once you're good, you can hit the submit. And the default or custom quarantine message will be created for you. Now let's create another one and you select the other option. Um, okay, the next. So I'm setting specific assets. Now, it says select actions, select release action recipient now. Now, under this, you have the option that says allow recipients to request a message to be released for the quarantine. So they'll be able to request that, oh, this message, I'm actually expecting this message from this particular sender. Can you release it for me? Or allow recipient to receive a message from quarantine themselves, which I don't think that's receive anyway. So let them request message to be released. So in that case, an admin can actually review that message. After reviewing, they can then go ahead to release the message. Then if there are other additional actions that you want recipient to be able to take on quarantine message, you have the option to set it here, which is actually an option that is not available for the limited access earlier, right? It's not available. Well, it's available here. So if you want them to delete the message, the quarantine message you can delete. If you want them to be able to preview the message, you can allow them to preview the message. If you want them to block the sender after previewing or allow the sender, so you can select any of these and the users will be able to, you know, view the message. But I'd like them to preview the message, but I don't want them to delete the message. I still want to be able to review the message myself as an admin. Then I can say next, okay, want them to receive notification? Yes, and notification should be formed. I don't want it to include messages from block sender. And you review that policy as well. When you're okay, you click on submit and the policy is created. Then as an admin, if you remember, if you come back to review, under review, we have the quarantine portal where an admin can also see all the messages that have been quarantined. If I click on this quarantine here, takes me to the quarantine portal, and I'm able to see, okay, what are the messages that have been quarantined? You know, let me filter by, okay, so in the last 30 days, can I go further than that? See time received. Let me see if I can select custom date. Start date. Let me see how far I can move it up. I guess that's still 30 days. Can I move it down? Apply. Let's see, it's going to give us a result. It's still going to be that just same, okay, that's the message, right? So an admin can see the message like this. So be able to see, okay, what is the subject of the message, right? See the subject here. What policy affect on this message? You see it. What's the policy name? This is one of the text policy I even created, started on this message, right? What was the reason? It was fish. Then we also see all the delivery details here. You can see the sender's email, the sender's address. So the sender's email from the address, the return part, then the sender IP, where the email is coming from, the location. I'm able to see it. Then what happened? The mark field, and yet taking pass and SPF pass for this user, right? So you can review that once you're done revealing the message is actually to me anyway. After revealing the message as an admin, can review, can open the email entity here. So that should open the email entity portal for us. 1 second. Okay, so this takes me to our Threat Explorer, where I'm able to see additional information about the email. So let me review the email here. Actually, the one I click on first, okay, email preview. So that means I'm seeing the email, right? It tells me what the email is all about. Then we go back and back to this portal. So if I want to release this message as an admin, I can just click on this release message. Remember, I have this 3 ellipses where I have other options, right? I can download the message, delete it from quarantine, preview the message, view message headers. So it was this message header that we saw that we can actually analyze the headers using the message header analyzer here. Just copy the message header and put it in the message header analyzer. So that is actually the other option that is available for us in terms of rule. So I think that is actually that about rules. Let's go out a bit, or the last part, which is also another section, which is order. So evaluation mode is actually like it says, where you actually configure to see if this actually requires I think I have the license. I should. Let me go back here. So with evaluation mode, right, you're configuring the Microsoft Defender for Office right, without impacting your production environment. It's just like it's a staging environment or a sandbox environment where you can start evaluating. You want to evaluate for all users, continue, right? Only using Exchange Online. Then if you're using a third party, I'm sure this is not even it's not even allowed, right? It's only cloud based. So if you want to share the data with Microsoft, you can select this and click on finish. So that's you evaluate. I'm not going deep into that, right? So it's going to evaluate everything in your organization for you. So you want to buy a paid subscription for the evaluation mode, you want to safeguard the organizations basically. Then this is going to evaluate everything. So far, I'm seeing that everything is good. Zero phishing links, zero malware emails, right? Impersonations, malware links, and all that. So that's how the evaluation mode works. Now, I think that's all about threat policy. If you talk about the alert policy here, right? What the alert policy is doing is that you have the opportunity to, create alerts. Now they're telling us here that mail flow alerts have moved to the new Exchange Admin Center, right? So if you want to create any mail flow alert, so customers will only be able to create, view, and edit mail flow alert in the exchange, the new exchange admin center. So these are different, alerts that are coming into the organizations, right? Tells you when the alert comes in, the category of the alert, the type of alert, the severity. You can manage alert activity. Before manage, you can create new alerts. So maybe there's a particular something that you as an administrator, you're trying to, you're suspecting something. So you want to create an alert for it. So you can just put a name for the alert and just call it test alert, and can put in a description of the alert, then severity option. So making an high alert, then the category of the alert. So you have the option. You can want to select an alert around threat management, permissions, information governance, others, or even mail flow. And let's select this and go next. So in terms of you want to create the alert settings, what are the things you actually want to create alert for? So maybe you're suspecting something. Okay, you want to detect malware in email messages, phishing emails detected at time of delivering, user submitted emails. So you can create alerts for any of this, and they are grouped into the different category. Can that be a common user activity? If you come down, common endpoints, users activity. If you come down, you see file sharing activity, file and folder activity. So anything you want to monitor as an alert, you're suspecting users are moving, downloading files, they are doing a lot of stuff. You can configure the alerts there. So let's say I want to see common endpoint like screen capture. Maybe users and organizations are trying to use the screen capture. Then that's activity. The under endpoint, right? It tells me it's an endpoint alert condition. So I can set the alerts. When should I receive the alerts? You know, if it's more than 15, more than or equals to 15 times, if it is within the last hours, if it's for all the users or a single user, you can select it. Maybe you're suspecting an insider user who you're suspecting to be malicious for. You can select this alert for the user, then click on next. So the recipients, if you decide if you want to notify people when it's alert is triggered, so you can put in your admin group here. Maybe you want all the admins to be notified. Put in the admin group, then the number of limits for the alerts. You can set the limits. Once you've done that, you click on next. You can now review all your settings. Do you want to turn up the policy in the right way? No, keep it up until I turn it. Yes, so I want to turn it up right away and click on submit. Once you do that, that's how to create an alert policy. So based on what you feel, your knowledge, what you're suspecting as an admin, you have the opportunity to create alerts for those things and you'll be able to monitor it. You get notifications once that particular event is being triggered, right? You get notification for it. Once it's created, just click on done here. So this will populate if there are alerts there. Let me refresh this. It's taking time. Some of the policies you are creating using the UI, you can actually create them, you know, using the PowerShell too. Maybe you had the PowerShell type that you like to use the PowerShell. You just create them, just have your commands, edit, do the normal editing, and you create some voila, you have the command. So these are test alerts here that we just created here. So you can always put a friend name. You can also you have the option to even edit the policies, delete the policies, turn it off, can add a description so that anybody that sees this kind of alert will know that, oh, this was created by this person and this was a purpose and can edit anything that's been created here, basically. Okay, let's go back to policies and rules. So activity alert. So the last under this. Now for activity alert, right? You can see that Microsoft is saying that we are working on a better experience for you to manage and view security and compliance alerts. So majorly, if you go to alert policies here, which is where we just left off now, where we created the alert. So I think Microsoft is depreciating that particular one. Let me be sure. To go back. So for every security and compliance alert, once you come under your incident and alert, you'll be able to see them basically. I know why this is taking longer, probably because the migration that is happening. So currently I don't have any alerts here, but the alert has been migrated here. But if you click on the new alert policies, you can create new alert policies as well here. This was the old UI. You put a description, send the alert when so there's a particular activity, you can select it. So yeah, this is like the old UI for it. Then send the alerts to same thing. So who is the recipient that should receive the alert? Right, basically. So there's nothing much there. All right. Yeah, so that is where we'll be ending it today for our Defender for Office 365. The last we'll be looking at in our next class before we jump into Defender for either identity or endpoint is attack simulator. So we'll be starting from here next class. Do you have any question?